When a nuclear submarine slips beneath the Arctic ice, the first sensation the crew experiences is separation. The hatch closes above their heads, heavy and final, and with that sound, the last trace of sunlight disappears. The familiar world remains somewhere far above. The sky, the horizon, the ordinary sense of time, all cut off in a single moment. The submarine begins its descent into the cold waters of the Arctic Ocean, where the temperature stays just below freezing. Above the hull stretches a massive ceiling of ice, layered and uneven, sometimes several meters thick. It presses silently from above, unseen but always present. This is a different reality. Time no longer flows as it does on land. There are no sunrises here, no sunsets, no gradual fading of light into evening. Day and night lose their meaning entirely. Instead, there is artificial illumination, steady, unchanging, and the constant low hum of machinery that fills every compartment. During the first hours of an under-ice patrol, the human body begins to notice the confinement. For newcomers, especially those entering an autonomous Arctic mission for the first time, the sensation can be unsettling. It may feel as if the walls are slowly closing in, as if the space itself is shrinking. Nothing is actually moving. What changes is awareness. The mind recognizes a new truth. There is no easy way back to the surface. Between you and the open sky lies a vast column of water, and above that, a hard shell of ice. This understanding does not arrive all at once. It settles gradually, quietly, and can linger in the background of every thought. Veteran submariners know this feeling well. They speak about it calmly, almost casually, explaining to younger crew members that it will pass, and it does. After 2 or 3 days, the brain adjusts. The submarine begins to feel less like a sealed container and more like a place of belonging. It becomes a kind of home, narrow, noisy, filled with the scent of machine oil and salt, but familiar and predictable. The body learns the rhythm of the vessel, the steady vibration of turbines, the muted voices of watch officers, the subtle motion of a massive structure moving through dark water. What once felt unnatural slowly becomes routine. The absence of windows no longer matters. The metal walls no longer feel oppressive. The submarine stops being an object and becomes an environment, one that surrounds you, carries you, and keeps you alive beneath the ice. And somewhere in that transition, without any clear moment of change, the crew begins to settle into the long, quiet life below the Arctic surface. The first night beneath the Arctic ice is rarely truly restful. When the time for sleep arrives, it is not announced by darkness outside a window. There is no evening sky, no fading light to signal the end of the day. Rest comes by schedule alone, determined by the rotation of watches and the quiet call that it is time to stand down. A submariner lies down on a narrow bunk, pulls a thin blanket closer, and becomes acutely aware of the space around him. The submarine never sleeps. A low, continuous hum passes through the hull, steady and deep, created by turbines and systems working without pause. Ventilation whispers through ducts above the bunks. Somewhere nearby, water moves through pipes, producing faint clicks and sighs. The entire structure seems to breathe slowly and evenly. There is motion, too,
Not enough to be called rocking, but just enough to be felt. A subtle, constant reminder that the vessel is moving through dark water, guided by instruments and experience rather than sight. From a neighboring compartment come muted voices. The watch is still on duty. Orders are given quietly. Reports are exchanged in calm, practiced tones. Occasionally, a drop of condensation falls from a cold pipe and taps against the metal deck below. And over everything hangs a single thought. The submarine is deep, far below the surface, with ice above. For someone unaccustomed to this environment, that thought can be difficult to release. The mind returns to it again and again, testing its weight, its meaning. Sleep may not come quickly. Minutes stretch into hours as the body remains tense, listening, adjusting, learning. Experienced submariners say that this is normal. On the second night, sleep comes a little faster. The turbine hum begins to feel less intrusive, more regular, almost reassuring. By the third night, the sound no longer disturbs rest at all. Instead, it becomes a steady backdrop, like distant surf on a shoreline you cannot see. Within a week, the unfamiliar becomes ordinary. The narrowness of the bunk is no longer noticed. The lack of windows no longer matters. The metal walls half a meter from your face no longer feel close. The body adapts to the submarine's rhythm. 4 hours on watch, 8 hours off, then 4 again. This cycle replaces day and night. The brain begins to measure time not by light, but by routine, by the sound of footsteps before a watch change, by the smell of food drifting from the galley, by the faces that appear and disappear in the compartment as shifts rotate. Some submariners later recalled that during long patrols under the Arctic ice, calendar dates lost all meaning. They knew only which watch they belonged to and how many days had passed since the mission began. Sleep in this environment becomes lighter but more efficient, shorter yet deeper. The body learns to rest when it can, without hesitation, without resistance. And slowly, without any clear moment of realization, the first night below the ice stops feeling strange. It becomes simply another night, quiet, enclosed, and steady, carried forward by the slow, deliberate movement of the submarine beneath the frozen sea.
Life beneath the Arctic ice unfolds in a world where the sky no longer exists. There are no windows on a submarine, no way to glimpse the surface or sense the passage of time by light alone. Once the vessel disappears beneath the ice, the natural rhythm that governs life on land is cut away completely. Morning and evening lose their meaning, night does not fall, and dawn never comes. Instead, the submarine lives under artificial light. Fluorescent lamps glow softly in every compartment, casting an even, slightly bluish illumination. The light remains the same hour after hour, day after day. It does not warm, it does not fade, and it never signals rest on its own. Only the ship's routine decides when brightness is reduced and when it returns to full strength. Before scheduled rest, the lighting is dimmed. The harsh glow softens, replaced by lower, duty-level illumination. Even then, darkness never truly arrives. Red indicator lights remain visible on control panels. Green system displays blink quietly. Dials and gauges glow faintly in the background. Complete darkness does not exist here. For the human body, this absence of natural light is deeply unsettling at first. The brain searches for familiar signals, the slow change of color in the sky, the gentle dimming of evening, and finds none.
In the early days of a patrol, many submariners feel slightly disoriented, unsure whether their bodies want to sleep or remain awake. The solution is routine. The submarine replaces the sun. Time is marked by watches, meals, announcements, and scheduled rest periods. The crew eats at fixed hours. Wake-up calls are made according to the watch system, not the clock on the wall. Over time, these signals form a new internal rhythm, one that exists entirely inside the steel hull. The body begins to follow it. Sleep comes not because it is dark, but because the schedule says it is time. Wakefulness returns not with sunrise, but with the quiet call to prepare for watch. Slowly, the brain accepts this artificial order as normal. Some submariners later said that after weeks beneath the ice, they could no longer say whether it was day or night on the surface. The concept lost relevance. What mattered was the current watch, the next meal, the next period of rest. Doctors on shore noted that this adjustment had consequences. After long patrols, returning submariners often needed several days to reacclimate to natural daylight. The first hours on the surface could be overwhelming. Even a cloudy Arctic sky appeared painfully bright. Eyes watered, heads ached. The body had forgotten how intense real sunlight could be. Yet, below the ice, this artificial world felt stable. The light never surprised you. It never changed without warning. It never demanded attention. In its constancy, it offered a strange kind of comfort. And so, in this place without sunrise or sunset, without shadows that move or fade, the crew learned to live by a different clock, one measured not by the sky, but by discipline, habit, and the quiet endurance of life beneath the frozen sea.
Living space inside a submarine beneath the Arctic ice is measured carefully, almost sparingly. Every meter, every corner, every surface has a purpose. There is no excess here, no empty room meant simply to feel open. The submarine is a machine first and a living space second. People adapt themselves to it, not the other way around. Sleeping quarters are arranged wherever space allows. Bunks line the bulkheads of compartments, stacked in 2 levels, sometimes 3. The distance between them is small, just enough to lie down and turn carefully from side to side. Sitting upright on a lower bunk is often impossible without bending forward, mindful of the metal frame above. Each bunk is simple, a folding metal structure, a stretched canvas or a thin mattress, a narrow blanket. Near the head, a small storage box holds personal belongings, a photograph or 2, a book read slowly over many nights, a notebook perhaps, or a letter written but not yet sent. This small space is the only private territory a submariner truly has. Everything else is shared. In the same compartment where dozens of sailors sleep, metal tables are bolted to the deck. Folding stools are tucked against the walls. A wash basin stands nearby, always in use. The remaining space is filled with pipes, cables, control panels, and equipment that hums quietly day and night. At first, this closeness can feel overwhelming. There's no place to step away entirely, no door to close for silence. Every sound, every movement, every presence is felt. A shift in the bunk above, footsteps in the narrow passage, someone turning over in sleep only an arm's length away. But the human mind adapts. What once felt intrusive slowly becomes familiar. The awareness of others fades into the background. Personal boundaries change shape. Instead of space, people learn to value predictability, knowing where everything is, who sleeps nearby, what sounds are normal.
The body memorizes the layout. Hands learn where to brace when climbing into an upper bunk. Feet know how to avoid pipes and edges in low light. Movements become economical, quiet, practiced. Nothing is done quickly or carelessly. Even turning in sleep becomes deliberate. In time, the narrowness loses its sharpness. The bunk becomes a refuge rather than a restriction, a place where the body can finally release its tension, even if only for a few hours. Wrapped in a thin blanket, surrounded by familiar sounds and familiar breathing, the submariner begins to rest. The steel walls do not feel hostile anymore. They feel close but protective. And within this confined space, carried forward beneath kilometers of ice and water, the crew settles into a rhythm of shared existence, where closeness is no longer a burden, but simply the way life is lived below the Arctic surface.
One of the hardest habits to accept beneath the Arctic ice is that a bed is never truly yours. On many submarines, especially during long patrols, there are fewer bunks than crew members. Space does not allow otherwise. And so sleep itself becomes something shared, passed from one person to another according to the watch schedule. Submariners gave this system a simple name, the hot bunk. It meant that the place where you lay down to rest had already been occupied not long before, and would be again soon after you left. When your watch ended and you climbed into the bunk, the first thing you noticed was warmth. The canvas or thin mattress still held the heat of another body. Sometimes it was slightly damp. The pillow carried the shallow imprint of someone else's head. The blanket smelled faintly of another person. For newcomers, this could feel deeply uncomfortable. On land, a bed is personal. It belongs to one body, one rhythm, one private world. Aboard a submarine, that idea fades quickly. Fatigue leaves little room for preference. After 4 hours on watch, often followed by meals and routine tasks, exhaustion outweighs discomfort. You lie down, and sleep arrives almost instantly. Within days, the hot bunk stops feeling strange. The body no longer reacts to the warmth or the unfamiliar traces left behind. What matters is rest, not ownership. Sleep becomes functional, efficient, essential. There is also an unspoken etiquette. Before leaving for watch, a submariner carefully folds the blanket, clears personal items, shakes off crumbs if food was eaten earlier. It is a quiet rule of respect. The next person deserves the same order you would want for yourself. In such close quarters, small acts of consideration matter greatly. Those who ignored this were quickly corrected, sometimes sharply. Cleanliness and order were not about comfort alone, they were about coexistence. The hot bunk also changed the way people thought about time. You were always aware that your rest was temporary, that in a few hours another sailor would need this same narrow space. There was no lingering, no stretching out slowly, no hesitation. Sleep was taken seriously, entered deliberately, and left without complaint. Strangely, this knowledge made rest deeper. The body learned to surrender quickly, to drop into sleep without resistance, to wake alert, ready to move. Over time, submariners discovered they could rest fully in 5 or 6 hours, sometimes better than 8 hours on shore. Sharing a bunk was not comfortable in the usual sense, but it was efficient, and under the ice, efficiency was survival. In this way, even sleep became a collective effort, another quiet reminder that beneath the Arctic ice, nothing belonged to one person alone. Everything was shared, everything was coordinated, and everything depended on the ability to rest, even when rest itself was temporary. Life beneath the Arctic ice is governed by a rhythm that never pauses.
It is not the rhythm of nature, but of necessity. The crew is divided into watches, and each watch follows the same strict pattern: 4 hours on duty, followed by 8 hours off. Then the cycle repeats. This structure replaces the familiar flow of morning, afternoon, and night. Over time, it becomes the only measure of time that matters. 4 hours on watch can feel long or short depending on the task. In control rooms and engine compartments, attention must remain steady and precise. Instruments are monitored, readings checked, systems listened to as much as they are observed. There is no room for distraction. Beneath the ice, vigilance is constant. When a watch ends, relief arrives quietly. There is no celebration, no dramatic shift. One sailor steps aside, another takes his place. A few brief words are exchanged. The submarine continues forward, unchanged. The 8 hours off are not truly free time. First comes food, then washing, quick and efficient. Sometimes a short task, a drill, or a small repair must be done. Only after these routines does sleep become possible. Often 5 or 6 hours remain, sometimes less. And yet, the body learns to accept this. The internal clock reshapes itself around the watch system. Hunger appears at predictable moments. Fatigue arrives on schedule. Wakefulness sharpens just before duty, even without an alarm. Many submariners reported that after several weeks, they woke moments before their watch began, their bodies already prepared. Large ship clocks hang in central areas, divided into segments rather than hours. Each section represents a watch. These clocks are consulted constantly, not to know the date, but to know one's place in the cycle. Time becomes practical. You no longer ask, "What day is it?" You ask, "Which watch am I on?" Over long patrols, calendar dates fade entirely. Days merge into one another. What remains is sequence: duty, rest, duty again. This repetition can feel monotonous, but it also brings stability. The predictability calms the mind. There are no surprises in the structure of the day, only in the tasks it contains. Sleep adjusts accordingly. It becomes lighter but more precise. Falling asleep happens quickly. Waking is immediate. The body no longer resists interruption. Rest is taken seriously, but without attachment. In this rhythm, beneath kilometers of water and ice, the submarine moves forward steadily, and so do the people inside it, carried by a cycle that replaces the sun, the clock, and the world above.
Because there is no real night beneath the Arctic ice, night has to be created. It is not born from the sky or the fading of daylight. It arrives by command, quietly and without ceremony. At a certain hour in the ship's routine, the lighting changes. Bright fluorescent lamps are dimmed. Harsh glare softens. The submarine does not grow dark. It simply becomes calmer. This is artificial night. Duty lighting takes over. Shadows lengthen slightly. Red and amber indicator lights remain visible on panels and instruments. Green displays blink at a steady pace. Gauges glow faintly, just bright enough to be read without effort. The submarine is never allowed to disappear into darkness. Too much depends on constant awareness. For the body, this half-light is enough. After days and weeks, the brain learns to read these signals as night. Muscles loosen more easily. Thoughts slow down. Even without windows, even without stars, the nervous system begins to understand this is the time to rest. Yet sleep here is never complete in the way it is on land. Light seeps through everything. It filters through eyelids,
It reflects softly off metal surfaces. Even with eyes closed, you are aware of the space around you, the outlines of pipes, the shape of the compartment, the presence of others nearby. Some submariners cover their eyes with a sleeve or a folded piece of cloth. Others turn their faces toward the bulkhead. Small adjustments help create a sense of separation from the environment. The submarine responds in its own way. Sounds soften but do not disappear. Footsteps become quieter. Voices drop to murmurs. Doors are closed gently, never slammed. There is an unspoken agreement to protect the fragile rest of those who have just left their watch. Respect for sleep becomes a shared responsibility. Even so, complete silence never arrives, and it is not expected to. Silence would be alarming. Silence would mean that systems have stopped, that something is wrong. The steady background noise, the hum, the airflow, the quiet life of the vessel is reassurance. Doctors later observed that this artificial night altered sleep patterns. Dreams became shorter, sleep cycles adjusted. Deep sleep still occurred, but in compressed intervals. The body learned to rest efficiently, extracting recovery from limited time and imperfect conditions. Over weeks, this false night began to feel normal. Submariners stopped longing for darkness. They stopped missing shadows and moonlight. The dim glow of instruments became familiar, even comforting. It meant the submarine was alive. It meant someone was always awake, always watching. And so, beneath the ice, night existed not as absence, but as balance. A carefully maintained state where the mind could release its grip just enough to rest, while the submarine continued its quiet journey through the frozen depths.
A submarine beneath the Arctic ice is never truly quiet. From the moment it leaves the surface until it returns again, sound is a constant companion. It fills the steel hull, passes through walls and decks, and settles into the body itself. For those new to under-ice patrols, this endless noise can feel overwhelming. Sleep at first seems impossible. The dominant sound is the hum of the turbines. Deep, steady, and unbroken, it runs through the submarine like a heartbeat. The nuclear reactor heats water into steam. Steam turns the turbines. The turbines drive the propellers. This chain of motion creates a low-frequency vibration that is felt more than heard. It moves through metal, through air, through the bunks themselves. At first, the mind resists it. The sound seems intrusive, too present, too close. It draws attention, pulling thoughts away from rest. Newcomers lie awake, listening, counting the pulses, wondering how anyone could ever sleep in such an environment. But adaptation comes quickly. Within days, the brain begins to filter the noise. What once stood out fades into the background. The hum becomes uniform, predictable, almost gentle. Many submariners later described it as soothing, a signal that everything is working as it should. Silence, by contrast, would be unsettling. Alongside the turbines comes the sound of ventilation. Air is constantly circulated, cleaned, cooled, and redistributed. Fans run without pause, producing a soft hiss and whisper through ducts above the bunks. This airflow is essential. Without it, the atmosphere would become heavy and unbreathable. Occasionally, the tone of the ventilation changes. A filter is adjusted. A fan speeds up or slows down. These small variations are noticed instantly. The crew becomes attuned to the soundscape of the submarine, sensitive to even minor differences. The hull itself speaks. As the submarine moves deeper, pressure increases. The steel structure responds with quiet creaks and clicks. Metal shifts against metal. bulkheads flex by fractions of a millimeter. These sounds can be startling at first, sharp, sudden, unfamiliar. Veteran submariners know them well. They say the submarine is breathing. These noises are normal, even reassuring. Only certain sounds signal danger. Everything else becomes part of the background, like the settling of an old house at night. Hydraulic systems add their own voices. Valves open and close, pumps move water between tanks, control surfaces adjust. Each action produces a distinct sound, brief and purposeful. Over time, submariners learn to identify them without looking. Lying on a bunk with eyes closed, an experienced sailor can tell when the submarine changes depth, when it turns, when systems shift from one mode to another. Sound becomes information. And slowly, these layers of noise transform. What once kept sleep away begins to invite it. The steady hum, the soft hiss, the occasional creak, all merge into a continuous, familiar presence. For many, it becomes a lullaby. Later, after returning to land, some submariners find it difficult to sleep in true silence. The absence of sound feels wrong, empty. They miss the noise that once surrounded them, the sound that meant motion, life, and safety beneath the ice.
Sleep beneath the Arctic ice brings dreams unlike those on the surface. At first, they're fragmented, short, uneven, often forgotten within seconds of waking. The body is still learning how to rest in this new world, and the mind remains alert even in sleep. But as days pass and routines settle, dreams begin to deepen. Many submariners later recalled that their dreams shared a common theme: space, wide, open, endless space. Some dreamed of walking through vast fields under a bright summer sky, grass brushing against their legs, wind moving freely around them. Others saw mountains rising in the distance, sharp and clear, with air so clean it seemed almost visible. Many dreamed of the sea, not the dark, cold mass surrounding the submarine, but warm southern waters, clear and sunlit, stretching to the horizon. These dreams were not random. Psychologists who worked with submarine crews believed they were a form of compensation. The mind, deprived of openness, light, and distance, created them internally. In dreams, there were no walls, no ceilings, no metal pressing close. The body rested while the mind escaped. But not all dreams were peaceful. Some submariners dreamed of suffocation. The air grew thick. Breathing became difficult. Each breath felt shallow and incomplete. These dreams reflected the reality of life aboard, the slightly elevated carbon dioxide levels, the heavy atmosphere that the body sensed even when instruments showed safe limits. Others dreamed of water, flooding compartments, rising levels, locked hatches. These were the most unsettling dreams. They touched the deepest quiet fear of underwater service, the knowledge that only steel separated life from the ocean. Waking from such a dream, a submariner would lie still for a moment, listening to the familiar hum, letting reality reassert itself. Often, someone nearby would notice. "Bad dream?" A simple question asked quietly. It was usually enough. Dreams of home were the most vivid of all. Kitchen tables, the sound of familiar voices, children laughing in the next room, a spouse moving through ordinary, everyday motions. These dreams felt painfully real. Waking from them could bring a sudden wave of longing. Opening one's eyes to pipes, cables, and metal bulkheads required a brief moment of adjustment.
Some sailors carried this feeling with them for hours, moving through their duties in silence until it faded. With experience, a kind of emotional protection developed. Veteran submariners advised the younger ones not to cling to dreams of home. "Save that for when you're back," they said. "Dreams are kind, but they can pull you too far away." So many learned to let dreams pass without holding on to them. Sleep techniques evolved naturally. Some focused on slow breathing, others counted quietly, letting numbers replace thoughts. A few whispered prayers or familiar verses, not from devotion alone, but for rhythm, repetition that calmed the mind. Over time, dreams became calmer, less dramatic, less urgent. The mind accepted the submarine as its temporary world. Sleep grew deeper, rest more effective, and in that enclosed space beneath the ice, the boundary between waking and dreaming softened, allowing the crew to recover night after night, carried forward by the quiet endurance of their vessel.
Beneath the Arctic ice, calm is not a personality trait. It is a necessity. In an environment where escape is impossible and danger cannot be outrun, panic has nowhere to go. It does not release energy, it traps it. For this reason, submariners learn very early that emotional balance is as important as technical skill. Fear is natural, but it must remain quiet. Every crew member understands that the submarine is a closed system. Any sudden movement, any uncontrolled reaction spreads instantly through the confined space. Anxiety becomes contagious. Calm, however, spreads just as easily. Veteran submariners often say that the most dangerous thing on board is not water, pressure, or machinery. It is a frightened mind. This is why routines matter so deeply. Repetition creates stability. Predictability reduces uncertainty. Small, familiar actions anchor the mind. The same path through the compartment, the same order of tasks after a watch, the same place to sit, the same cup, the same motions. These habits may seem insignificant, but they form a quiet framework that supports psychological balance. When the external world cannot change, the internal one must become steady. Sleep plays a central role in this process. A rested mind reacts more slowly, and that is a good thing here. Decisions are measured, movements are deliberate, emotional responses soften. Submariners learn that protecting sleep is protecting the entire crew. This is why rest is respected almost instinctively. Loud voices near sleeping bunks are avoided. Doors are handled carefully. Conversations lower themselves without being asked. No one wants to be the reason another sailor enters a watch exhausted. Calm also changes how danger is perceived. Alarms and drills are part of life beneath the ice. They occur regularly, often without warning. But even during emergency exercises, voices remain controlled. Commands are short and precise. There is no shouting, no unnecessary urgency. The goal is not speed alone, it is clarity. When something truly goes wrong, the crew relies on this trained calm. Hands move automatically, minds stay focused. Fear is acknowledged, but not allowed to take control. Over time, this discipline reshapes the inner world. Many submariners later noticed that after long patrols, they reacted differently to stress on land. Situations that once felt overwhelming now seemed manageable. Noise, crowds, pressure all appeared less threatening than the silent weight of ice overhead. Calm, learned underwater, followed them home. And when night came aboard the submarine,
and a sailor lay down on a narrow bunk, that same calm made sleep possible. Not perfect sleep, not luxurious rest, but enough. Enough to recover, enough to continue, enough to survive. In the depths beneath the Arctic ice, calm was not the absence of fear. It was the decision to move gently through it and to rest even when the world above had long disappeared.
Food beneath the Arctic ice is more than nourishment. It is structure. It is comfort. It is a quiet anchor in a world without daylight. Meals aboard a submarine follow the same logic as everything else. They are scheduled, practical, and essential. After a watch ends, eating is often the first step back toward rest. The body, having spent hours alert and tense, needs energy before it can release itself into sleep. The galley is small, crowded with equipment, pipes, and storage. 2 or 3 cooks work in a space barely large enough to turn around, yet from this narrow corner comes one of the most powerful signals on the boat, the smell of food. Even before a meal is announced, the aroma spreads through the compartments. Warm soup, fresh bread, cooked meat. These smells move ahead of sleep, telling the body that effort has ended, that recovery can begin. Submariners eat generously. Calorie intake is high, often far above what would be needed on land. Life beneath the ice demands it. The artificial atmosphere, constant vigilance, and psychological strain consume energy quietly but relentlessly. Food replaces what the environment takes away. After eating, fatigue deepens, muscles loosen, breathing slows, thoughts become less sharp. This is the moment when sleep becomes possible. Many submariners noticed that rest came more easily after a solid meal. Hunger keeps the mind alert, restless. Fullness allows it to settle. The body, satisfied and warm, begins to shift from readiness to recovery. Meals also divide time. They give shape to the long hours between watches. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and night rations for those on duty. These moments punctuate the cycle, offering brief pauses of normality. People gather, exchange a few quiet words, sometimes smile. The submarine feels, for a short while, less like a machine and more like a shared home. Sleep that follows food is often deeper. Not longer, time rarely allows that, but heavier, more complete. The body uses those few hours efficiently, repairing itself as best it can. Even in a narrow bunk, even beneath artificial light, even with the hum of turbines nearby, rest arrives. Over weeks, the connection becomes automatic. Watch ends, meal follows, sleep comes. This sequence repeats until it feels natural. Later, doctors observed that submariners developed an unusual ability to recover quickly. Their bodies learned to extract maximum rest from minimal conditions. 5 hours of sleep, properly timed, could feel as restorative as a full night on land. Food made this possible. It was not indulgence, it was preparation for rest. And so, beneath the Arctic ice, eating and sleeping became intertwined, 2 quiet acts of survival that sustained the crew, cycle after cycle, as the submarine continued its slow, deliberate journey through the frozen depths. Sleep beneath the Arctic ice is never unconditional. Even during rest, a submariner remains connected to the boat. Part of the mind stays alert, listening, ready. This is not anxiety, it is training. A learned state where the body rests but awareness never disappears completely. Emergency drills are a regular part of life underwater. They happen without warning. Alarms sound suddenly, lights change, commands echo through compartments. The purpose is simple: ensure that every crew member can move, think, and act immediately, no matter the hour or state of rest. For those new to submarine service, these moments are the most difficult. Being pulled from sleep by an alarm, heart racing, body confused, surroundings dim and unfamiliar. It takes time to learn how to respond calmly. In the early days, movements are rushed, breathing is fast, thoughts scatter. But repetition changes this. Over weeks, the body learns to wake cleanly. Eyes open, muscles engage. Fear does not lead, habit does. A submariner can go from deep sleep to full readiness in seconds, guided by routine rather than emotion. This ability reshapes sleep itself. Rest becomes lighter but not weaker. The body does not sink as deeply, yet recovery still happens. It is a form of guarded rest, sleep that can be released instantly if needed. Some described it as sleeping with one ear open. Yet this state does not exhaust the crew as one might expect. On the contrary, it creates confidence. Knowing that you can wake and act without panic reduces subconscious tension. The mind rests more easily when it trusts the body. Veteran submariners often slept through drills they were not required for. Alarms would sound, boots would hit the deck, voices would move through the compartment, and still they slept. Their bodies recognized whether the signal concerned them. If not, rest continued uninterrupted. This selectivity was learned, not innate. It came from familiarity with sounds, commands, and patterns. The submarine spoke through noise, and the crew learned its language. Not every sound demanded attention. Not every alarm required movement. Sleep adapted to this hierarchy. The mind filtered information even while resting, allowing the body to remain calm. Over time, this ability became one of the most valuable skills on board, the capacity to rest in uncertainty without surrendering readiness. On land, such sleep might seem impossible. Under the ice, it is essential. Because the submarine never stops and the ocean never rests, the crew must learn to sleep not despite readiness, but within it.
Beneath the Arctic ice, time begins to behave strangely. Days lose their edges, weeks pass without clear markers, without sunrise or sunset, without changing light or visible weather. The mind slowly releases its attachment to dates. Calendars remain somewhere on the walls, but they are consulted less and less. What matters is not the day of the month. What matters is the watch. Life is measured in cycles, 4 hours on duty, 8 hours off. This pattern repeats with quiet precision, folding time in on itself. After a while, it becomes difficult to remember what day of the week it is. For some, even the number of days since departure fades into approximation. This is not confusion, it is simplification. The brain conserves energy by letting go of information it no longer needs. There is no appointment to miss, no deadline beyond the next watch. The future narrows to practical concerns: when to sleep, when to eat, when to report to duty. Many submariners later described this as a strange relief. On land, time is full of demands. Clocks insist, calendars accuse. Beneath the ice, time becomes neutral. It does not hurry you, it does not judge, it simply repeats. To prevent disorientation, routines are reinforced deliberately. Meals are served at fixed hours. Announcements are made at the same times each cycle. Ships' radio broadcasts mark certain moments: news, weather reports from the surface, brief messages from command. These signals act as anchors, small reminders that the world above still exists and continues to move forward. Some crew members keep personal rituals. They mark days quietly in notebooks. They count watches completed. They note small changes, a repaired system, a new drill, a rare surfaced moment. These gestures give shape to passing time without demanding attention. Sleep adjusts once again. Without a calendar, rest becomes more instinctive. The body no longer waits for a night. It sleeps when allowed, wakes when required. Dreams lose their sense of sequence. Past and present blend gently, without urgency. For many, this altered sense of time becomes one of the most enduring memories of under-ice patrols. A world where hours mattered, but days did not. Where routine replaced urgency. Where life narrowed, not to imprison the mind, but to free it from unnecessary weight. And in that narrowed world, beneath kilometers of ice and water, the crew learned to move through time quietly. One watch, one rest period, one breath at a time.
Not everyone slept the same beneath the Arctic ice. There was a difference, quiet but noticeable, between those on their first patrol and those who had already lived through many. Experience changed the way the body rested. Veteran submariners often slept more easily, more deeply, and with less effort than newcomers. It was not because conditions were better. They were not. The bunks were just as narrow, the air just as heavy, the sounds just as constant. What changed was trust. Experienced sailors trusted the submarine. They trusted its systems, its structure, its ability to withstand pressure and ice. They trusted the crew around them, the men standing watch, the mechanics listening to machines, the officers reading instruments in the control room. This trust allowed the mind to let go. Where a newcomer might lie awake replaying thoughts of depth and ice overhead, a veteran closed his eyes and slept. Not because he forgot the danger, but because he understood it. Familiarity replaced imagination. Veterans also understood their own bodies. They knew how much rest they needed. They knew when to eat and when to lie down. They knew which thoughts to avoid before sleep. Many developed small personal rituals. Some read the same book again and again, not for the story, but for the familiarity. Others lay in the same position, breathing slowly until the body followed. These habits acted like signals, telling the mind it was safe to release control. Their sleep was efficient. They did not fight wakefulness. They did not chase perfect rest. They accepted what the environment allowed. This acceptance made rest deeper. Veteran submariners were also less disturbed by interruptions. Alarms, drills, changes in sound. These no longer startled them. They woke smoothly, acted if needed, and returned to sleep without frustration. Younger sailors watched this with quiet admiration. To sleep calmly beneath the Arctic ice was seen as a mark of mastery, a sign that someone had fully entered the world of the submarine, not just physically, but mentally. And so, over time, those who had once struggled began to change as well. They learned from observation, from routine, from repetition, until one day, without noticing when it happened, they too slept easily, carried forward by the same steady hum, beneath the same frozen ceiling, trusting the world they now understood.
Even after adaptation, the ice above is never forgotten. It does not press on the mind constantly, but it is always there, a quiet awareness, settled somewhere deep and unmoving. The crew knows that above the submarine lies not open water, but a ceiling of frozen mass, thick, uneven, drifting slowly with currents and wind far beyond reach. Most of the time, no one speaks of it. Talking about the ice gives it weight. Silence keeps it manageable. The knowledge exists without emotion. It becomes a fact, like gravity or depth, something acknowledged and set aside. Veteran submariners explain this to newcomers gently. Do not imagine the ice, accept it, because imagination is the real danger. If a person begins to picture the thickness above, the pressure, the distance to air, the mind can spiral. Thoughts multiply, sleep retreats, calm dissolves. And so the crew learns a different approach, one rooted in discipline rather than denial. They trust the charts, they trust the sonar, they trust the calculations made long before the patrol began. The ice is measured, mapped, monitored. It is not an unknown threat, but a condition, challenging, but accounted for. Knowing this allows the mind to remain steady. At night, lying in a bunk, the thought may surface briefly. Ice above, water all around, steel in between. But it does not linger. The body focuses instead on familiar sensations, the hum of turbines, the flow of air, the subtle vibration beneath the mattress. These signals speak more loudly than abstract danger. They say the submarine is moving, systems are working, people are awake. Sleep returns. Some submariners even found comfort in the ice. It shielded them from surface storms. It muted waves and weather. It created a quiet, insulated world below. Under thick ice, the ocean felt calmer, more predictable. No surface traffic, no sudden changes, just steady motion through dark water. For some, this made rest easier rather than harder. In time, the ice above became part of the background, no more alarming than the hull beneath or the depth beneath that. It was simply where the submarine was. And in accepting that fact without resistance, without fear, the crew found something unexpected, the ability to sleep peacefully, even with a frozen world pressing silently overhead. Because beneath the Arctic ice, peace does not come from safety alone. It comes from understanding.
As the patrol slowly moves toward its later weeks, sleep begins to change once more. Not abruptly, not dramatically, but subtly, in ways that are only noticed afterward. The body has adapted to the submarine. The rhythm of watches feels natural. The sounds no longer demand attention. Rest comes more easily now than it did at the beginning, and yet something shifts inside the mind. Dreams begin to turn upward. Submariners start dreaming of the surface more often, not in sharp images, but in sensations, open air, wind on the face, light that is not artificial, not filtered through metal and glass, but wide and natural. Even those who rarely thought about home while awake begin to see it at night. These dreams are calmer than earlier ones, less urgent, less intense, but persistent. Some dream of simple things, standing outside without purpose, walking down a street without checking time, sitting by a window and watching light change slowly across a wall. Others dream of water again, but now from above, looking out over a calm sea rather than being enclosed within it. Psychologists later noted this pattern. As the end of isolation approaches, the mind begins to prepare for return. It gently reintroduces images of openness and choice, not as longing, but as orientation, a quiet reminder that another world still exists. Sleep becomes lighter, not because of fear, but because of anticipation.
The body senses change before it is announced. Even without knowing dates or distances, it feels that the cycle is nearing completion. This awareness does not disturb rest completely, but it fragments it. Dreams come and go more quickly. Waking happens more often, though without anxiety. Many submariners described lying in their bunks, half asleep, listening to the familiar hum and thinking not of danger, but of movement forward, not through water, but through time. Conversations during off hours begin to shift as well. They remain quiet, but topics change. People speak of ordinary things, food they miss, places they want to visit, small plans that require no urgency. These thoughts drift easily into sleep, shaping dreams without weight. And yet, no one rushes the end. There is an unspoken understanding that this world beneath the ice will soon be gone, and that something will be lost with it. The closeness, the shared rhythm, the certainty of routine. Dreams reflect this balance, return without escape, openness without urgency. So sleep continues, steady but altered, carrying within it both the memory of confinement and the first gentle outlines of space beyond the steel hull. A transition happening quietly, one night at a time.
As the patrol approaches its final phase, sleep becomes more fragile. Not because conditions worsen, not because danger increases, but because the mind begins to look ahead. The submarine continues its steady movement beneath the ice. Watches are kept, meals are served, systems operate as they always have. On the surface, nothing has changed, and yet internally, the crew feels a quiet shift. The end is no longer abstract, it is approaching. This awareness settles gently into the body. Muscles remain relaxed, but thoughts become more active. Lying in a bunk, a submariner may notice that sleep no longer comes as instantly as before. The mind drifts forward, touching images of home, of land, of ordinary life waiting beyond the mission. These thoughts are not anxious, they are anticipatory. Sleep still arrives, but it is lighter, shorter, more easily interrupted. People wake briefly, then fall back asleep, then wake again. Time stretches. A single hour of rest can feel long, filled with half dreams and quiet awareness. Some lie awake listening, the hum of turbines, the flow of air, the distant movement of the crew. These sounds, once unnoticed, become more distinct again, not threatening, but familiar, almost nostalgic. The submarine speaks, and the listener understands that soon this voice will be gone. Dreams during this period often mix worlds. A kitchen appears inside a compartment. A childhood street opens into a steel corridor. Faces from home move through the submarine without surprise. The boundary between memory and environment softens. Sleep becomes a place where past and present meet gently, without urgency. During waking hours, behavior changes subtly. People smile more often. Conversations linger a little longer. There is quiet humor, a shared understanding that something important is ending. At the same time, discipline remains intact. No one relaxes too much. The patrol is not finished yet. Veteran submariners know this phase well. They say it is the most delicate time psychologically. Anticipation can be distracting. Thinking too far ahead can pull attention away from the present. And so the same lessons apply once more. Focus on routine, protect sleep, remain calm. At night, lying down, many consciously return to simple techniques, slow breathing, repetition, letting thoughts pass without holding them. Sleep, even now, is treated with respect, because beneath the Arctic ice, until the moment of surfacing, the mission continues, and rest, however light, remains essential.
so the crew sleeps in fragments, in pauses, in quiet stretches between thoughts, carried forward by the submarine, suspended between the world they have known for weeks and the one that waits above.
The moment of return does not arrive suddenly. It announces itself gradually, through small changes that the crew senses before they are spoken aloud. The submarine's course adjusts. Activity becomes more focused. Movements are precise, deliberate. Everyone knows what this means, even before the words are said. Surfacing is approaching. Beneath the Arctic ice, this is never a simple act. The submarine does not rise freely. It searches first for an opening, a lead in the ice, a stretch of thinner cover, a place where the frozen ceiling allows passage. Sonar listens carefully. Calculations are checked and rechecked. When the moment comes, the ascent is slow. Water pressure eases gently. The hull responds with familiar sounds, quiet shifts, muted creaks, as if the submarine itself is adjusting after a long confinement. Inside, the crew waits, calm and attentive. Then comes the change, a subtle difference in sound, a new resonance in the air, the sense that space has opened above. When the hatch is finally unlocked and lifted, Arctic air pours downward through the submarine, cold, sharp, unmistakably real. It rushes into compartments that have not known true freshness for weeks, sometimes months. Breathing it feels almost shocking. The lungs, accustomed to dense, recycled air, expand fully. The cold stings the throat. The nose tingles. Some close their eyes instinctively, overwhelmed by the sensation of openness carried on that invisible current. Those who are allowed topside emerge slowly. The light is intense. Even under cloud cover, the sky feels painfully bright. Eyes water, faces tighten against the cold wind, and above, always above, stretches open space, immense and silent. Ice fields surround the submarine, fractured and uneven. The horizon feels impossibly distant after weeks of steel walls and narrow passages. Some step onto the ice itself, testing their balance, surprised by the stillness beneath their feet. There is no rush. People stand quietly, breathing, looking, absorbing. A few words are exchanged, but mostly there is silence, the kind that does not demand to be filled. This moment is brief. Soon the hatch closes again. The submarine resumes its journey, now closer to home. But something has changed. The memory of open air remains, sharp and vivid. That night, sleep feels different. The hum is the same. The bunk is the same. The space is the same. But the mind carries the image of the sky. And rest comes with a quiet sense of completion beginning to form. The knowledge that the long descent beneath the ice had reached its turning point, and the path now leads back toward the world above.
Return does not bring immediate rest. When the submarine finally reaches its base and the crew steps ashore, sleep does not come easily. The body has learned another world, another rhythm, and it does not release it at once. On land, everything feels different. Rooms seem impossibly large. Ceilings rise too high. Walls are far away. There are no pipes overhead, no bulkheads close enough to touch. The sense of enclosure that once felt normal is suddenly gone, replaced by openness that can feel strangely unsettling. And there is silence, true silence. No turbine hum, no ventilation hiss, no distant mechanical breathing. For many submariners, This absence is the hardest adjustment. Lying in a real bed, in a quiet room, the mind searches for familiar sound. Without it, sleep hesitates. Some turn on radios, fans, anything to recreate a background presence, a reminder of movement, of continuity. Beds feel unfamiliar too. The mattress is soft, almost too soft. The body sinks instead of resting firmly. Blankets feel heavy or awkward. Pillows seem wrong. The narrow bunk, once a limitation, had offered certainty. This new comfort requires relearning. The first nights are often fragmented. Sleep comes in short stretches. Dreams pull the sleeper back underwater. A sudden awaking brings confusion. Where are the walls, the lights, the sounds? Hands reach instinctively for metal that is no longer there. Then understanding returns. You are home. The patrol is over. This realization brings relief so strong it can feel emotional, even overwhelming. Some laugh quietly in the dark. Others lie still, letting the certainty settle. Sunlight also demands adjustment. Even pale northern daylight feels intense after weeks under artificial lamps. Eyes tire quickly. Headaches appear. The body must slowly remember how to live with a sky that changes, with shadows that move, with mornings and evenings that arrive on their own. Within days, balance returns. Sleep deepens. Dreams soften. The body regains weight and color. Yet something remains altered. Many submariners notice that they value rest differently now. Sleep is no longer automatic or taken for granted. It is something to be protected, appreciated. Silence becomes meaningful again. Space becomes something to enjoy, not fear. And sometimes, even years later, a former submariner will wake in the night and miss the hum, miss the certainty of steel walls, miss the shared rhythm of watches, miss the quiet closeness of life beneath the ice. These are not regrets. They are traces, gentle reminders of a time when sleep was earned under the most unusual conditions, when rest came not from comfort, but from trust, discipline, and the steady presence of others. And those memories, carried forward into ordinary nights, shape the way sleep is felt forever.
When the experience beneath the Arctic ice finally settles into memory, one lesson remains clearer than all the others. Sleep is not comfort, it is balance. Under the ice, there were no ideal conditions. The bunks were narrow, the air was heavy, light never truly faded, sound never fully stopped, and yet people slept. Not perfectly, not deeply every night, but enough. Enough to endure, enough to remain clear, enough to continue. The submarine taught this slowly, without words. It stripped sleep of luxury and returned it to its purpose. Rest was no longer something promised by softness or silence. It was something created through routine, trust, and acceptance. The crew learned that the body adapts far more than the mind expects, that calm matters more than comfort, that predictability is more valuable than darkness, that shared responsibility protects rest better than isolation. Beneath the ice, sleep became an agreement between the sailor and the vessel, between one watch and the next, between exhaustion and recovery. Everyone depended on everyone else sleeping well enough to do their part. This understanding followed submariners back to the surface. In ordinary life, many found themselves sleeping differently, less demanding, less impatient. Silence was appreciated, but no longer required. A firm bed was welcomed, but not expected. Rest came more easily because the body remembered how little was truly necessary. Sleep, once tested under extreme conditions, lost its fragility. It became resilient. And so, when night arrives now, wherever you are, and you lie down to rest, there is something quietly reassuring in remembering this story, that even beneath kilometers of ice and water, surrounded by metal and darkness, human beings learned to sleep. Not because the world was gentle, but because they were adaptable. And in that adaptability lies a calm truth. If rest is possible there, it is possible anywhere. Let the mind release its hold. Let the body follow its rhythm. The ice has passed. The journey continues, quietly, steadily, into sleep.